What if Mount Rushmore had full presidential bodies? Or the Lincoln Memorial was a glass-topped pyramid? And the World Trade Center? It nearly came back as a giant hashtag. Yep, history's most iconic landmarks almost looked completely different. From bizarre blueprints to forgotten fantasies, here's what they could have been and why we're lucky they weren't. Christ the Redeemer, Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. What if Christ the Redeemer hadn't opened his arms, but held a globe and a cross instead? Well, back in the 1920s, the original idea for Rio's iconic mountaintop statue was drastically different. Called Christ the Transporter, the design featured Jesus holding a giant globe in one hand and a towering cross in the other, more symbolic but far less inviting. It was meant to represent global power and salvation, but critics felt it lacked warmth and emotional connection. The design sparked debate. Should the statue command awe or offer comfort? Eventually, Brazilian engineer Heitor da Silva Costa and French sculptor Paul Landowski agreed on a more human gesture: open arms. This simple change transformed the statue from a religious monument to a universal symbol of peace and protection, forever redefining Rio's skyline and identity. Manhattan Glass Dome, New York City, USA. Imagine New York City under a giant glass bubble. In the 1960s, futurist R. Buckminster Fuller proposed a jaw-dropping idea: covering Midtown Manhattan with a mile-wide geodesic dome. Yep, an actual glass dome over the city. His plan aimed to regulate the weather, reduce air pollution, and slash energy costs. The dome would have created a stable climate, keeping snow and smog out while letting sunlight in. Sounds like sci-fi, right? But there were problems, huge ones. The logistics were nightmarish, the cost was astronomical, and the public wasn't exactly thrilled about living in a greenhouse. Critics also feared it would trap more heat and restrict air movement. In the end, the idea was shelved, but it remains one of the boldest what-ifs in architectural history, a utopian bubble dream that never made it past the drawing board. Sydney Opera House, Sydney, Australia. What if the Sydney Opera House looked more like a bunker than a sailboat? Before Jørn Utzon's now iconic design won the 1957 competition, there was another contender, Joseph Marzella's brutalist proposal, a stark, angular structure of concrete slabs and sharp edges. While Utzon envisioned a sculpture rising from the harbour like billowing sails, Marzella's design felt cold, geometric, and militaristic. Some praised it as modern and efficient. Others said it looked more like a parking garage with ambition. The judges hesitated until they saw Utzon's sketches. Though his design was considered impossible to build, it sparked emotion. It felt alive. Today, the Opera House defines Sydney's identity. But had Marzella's vision been chosen, Australia's most famous building might have been remembered not for its elegance, but for its concrete severity. Washington Monument, Washington, D.C. What if the Washington Monument wasn't a sleek obelisk, but a colossal temple complex? When first proposed in the 1830s, architect Robert Mills imagined something far more extravagant than the minimalist monument we know today. His original plan featured a neoclassical circular temple surrounded by 30 towering columns, topped by a 600-foot column and, at its peak, a giant statue of George Washington riding a chariot. Yep, a literal chariot in the sky. It was bold, it was grand, and it was expensive. As political tensions rose and funding dried up, the plan was scaled back, way back. By the time construction resumed after the Civil War, the temple idea was scrapped entirely. What survived was just the central obelisk, simple, powerful, and timeless. But once upon a time, America nearly had a monument that looked like a Roman myth. Burj Khalifa, Dubai, UAE. What if the Burj Khalifa wore a shiny reflective cape? Before Dubai's iconic needle-like tower pierced the sky, one radical concept floated through the architectural circles: the Exo Burj. Imagine the world's tallest building draped in a massive, shimmering metallic shell. Kind of reflective cloak designed to protect it from the scorching desert sun. It would have acted like a second skin, reducing heat, shielding the structure, and turning the entire skyscraper into a glistening desert mirage. But while innovative, the design posed big challenges. Airflow issues, engineering nightmares, and a risk of turning downtown Dubai into a giant solar oven. Aesthetically, some feared it would hide the tower's elegance under a flashy gimmick. So the cape was ditched. Instead, architects embraced the Burj's tapering form, inspired by desert flowers and Islamic geometry, sleek, bold, and proudly uncovered for the world to admire. The White House, Washington, D.C. Are you ready to imagine the White House with domes, towers, or even a touch of Gothic flair? Before the neoclassical mansion we know today was chosen, the White House could have looked very different. Among the rejected designs was Thomas Jefferson's own sketch, a low Italian-style villa with arcades and terraces. Then there was James Diamond's over-the-top plan, complete with soaring domes, statues, and dramatic towers, more fit for a European palace than a young republic. In total, 9 designs were submitted in 1792. Some were flashy, some were odd, none captured the restrained elegance George Washington wanted until Irish-born architect James Hoburn's proposal landed. Inspired by Dublin's Leinster House, it balanced grandeur with simplicity. So the White House we know almost wore many faces. But in the end, it chose dignity over drama. Barely. Statue of Liberty, New York City, USA. Suppose the Statue of Liberty had ended up in Egypt, wearing a veil and holding a lantern. That was the original idea. Before she ever graced New York Harbor, sculptor Friedrich August Bartholdy pitched a colossal statue called Egypt Carrying the Light to Asia, a robed female figure representing progress, meant to stand at the Suez Canal's entrance. She would hold a torch aloft, just like Lady Liberty, but her purpose was to symbolize Egypt's gateway between East and West. The plan was bold, but the Khedive of Egypt said no, too expensive. So Bartholdy kept the design, reworked the details, and pitched it again, this time to America. The result? One of the world's most famous symbols of freedom. But it all started as a dream for the desert, not the Hudson. Tower Bridge, London, the UK. Suppose London's iconic Tower Bridge had looked more like a Mario Kart track than a royal landmark. Before the current design was chosen in the late 1800s, one wild proposal imagined a looping figure-8 bridge, complete with spiral ramps and elevated pathways that twisted like a racetrack. The idea was to allow pedestrians and carriages to cross at different levels, while ships passed below, all without raising or splitting the structure. Ingenious? Maybe. Terrifying? Definitely. Critics feared it would confuse riders, cause accidents, and clutter the city's historic skyline. Plus, the engineering demands were ahead of their time. Eventually, architect Sir Horace Jones and engineer John Wolfe Barry went with the now-beloved drawbridge design. Elegant, practical, and unmistakably British. But somewhere out there, a version of London has double-decker carriages zooming through steel loops like it's rush hour on Rainbow Road. Lincoln Memorial, Washington, D.C. The Lincoln Memorial was almost a pyramid rising over Washington, D.C. In the early 1900s, architects debated how best to honor Abraham Lincoln, and the ideas were wild. One proposal suggested a stepped Mesopotamian ziggurat, symbolizing Lincoln's rise from humble roots. Another pitched a glass-topped pyramid, evoking timelessness and mystery. And then there was the boldest of all. A Parthenon-style temple with colossal columns draws a direct line between American democracy and ancient Greece. Critics clashed. Some wanted a modernist form, others insisted on classical gravitas. In the end, architect Henry Beacon's Greek Revival design won out. Simple, solemn, and deeply symbolic. It echoed strength without excess. Today, the memorial stands serene on the National Mall. But it could have been something radically different. part ancient temple, part desert tomb, part skyscraper dream. World Trade Center, New York City, USA. What if New York's skyline had been rebuilt with 4 shimmering towers in a perfect hashtag shape? After the tragic fall of the original World Trade Center, architects around the world submitted bold, often surreal visions for Ground Zero's rebirth. Among them, the quadruple towers, 4 identical skyscrapers arranged like a hashtag, symbolize unity and interconnectedness in the digital age. It was dramatic, futuristic, and full of meaning. Other proposals pushed boundaries too. Spirals, crystalline spikes, even hollow core towers meant to reflect absence. Some were stunned with emotion. Others felt too abstract, even chaotic. In the end, architect Daniel Libeskind's vision took root. A soaring one-world trade center, surrounded by a respectful memorial and thoughtful architecture. Sleek, powerful, and reflective, both literally and metaphorically. But for a moment, New York nearly got a hashtag-shaped tribute, rising from grief with a digital age twist. Taj Mahal, Agra, India. Where is the black Taj Mahal that was meant to mirror the white one? Legend has it that Emperor Shah Jahan, after building the breathtaking white marble Taj Mahal for his beloved Mumtaz Mahal, dreamed of constructing a second Taj, this time in black marble, directly across the Yamuna River. The two would face each other, connected by a silver bridge, symbolizing eternal love and perfect symmetry. Life and death, light and shadow. But the plan never made it past fantasy. Political turmoil, Shah Jahan's imprisonment by his own son Aurangzeb, and the empire's strained finances buried the idea quite literally. Today, across the river lies the Matab Bagh Garden, where some claim ruins of the Black Taj once stood or could have stood. Fact or myth, it's one of history's most daunting architectural what-ifs, a twin that never saw the light. Mount Rushmore, South Dakota, USA. Have you ever imagined Mount Rushmore with legs? When sculptor Gutzon Borglum first envisioned the monument, it wasn't just about faces. He actually planned to carve the full bodies of the presidents, from head to waist, standing tall within the Black Hills. That's right, Mount Rushmore could have featured a presidential lineup in full heroic pose. But budget cuts and tough granite made the idea a no-go. Later, there was even talk of adding Susan B. Anthony, the trailblazing suffragette, to the mountain. Lawmakers pushed for it in the 1930s to honor women's rights, but the plan hit a wall, literally. The granite around the sculpture was too fragile to support new carvings, and politics got in the way. So we're left with just 4 heads. Iconic, yes, but missing the wild ambition the original plans had in mind. Arc de Triomphe, Paris, France. What if Paris's grandest arch had a trunk and tusks? Before the Arc de Triomphe became the symbol of French pride and victory, architect Charles Ribard had a wildly different idea in the 1750s. A colossal elephant-shaped building called l'Éléphant Triomphal. This wasn't just a sculpture, it was a livable monument. Inside the elephant's belly, a spiral staircase, lounges, and even a ballroom. Water would gush from its trunk like a fountain, and smoke would billow from its nostrils during celebrations. Ribard pitched it as both a monument and an experience, but authorities laughed it off. Too bizarre, too expensive, too ahead of its time. Fast forward a few decades and Napoleon went with the more traditional Arc de Triomphe. But Paris almost had a giant elephant standing proudly on the Champs-Élysées. Now that's what you call trunk-based architecture. United States Capitol Building, Washington, D.C. Are you ready to picture the US Capitol crowned with a giant chicken? Believe it or not, one early proposal for the Capitol building included a bizarre twist. A massive weather vane shaped like a rooster perched on top. In the late 18th century, as architects debated how to cap the dome, one quirky idea involved using a barnyard-style rooster as a patriotic symbol of vigilance and awakening. Some argued it represented the dawn of democracy, Others just thought it looked ridiculous. Thankfully, cooler heads prevailed. Instead, the capital was eventually topped with the dignified Statue of Freedom in 1863, standing over 19 feet tall and weighing 15,000 pounds. Still, the thought lingers. America's most powerful building almost ended up with a chicken as its crown jewel. Imagine the memes. Eiffel Tower, Paris, France. What if the Eiffel Tower had been a giant guillotine looming over Paris? Before Gustave Eiffel's iron masterpiece redefined the Paris skyline, the French had far darker and heavier ideas. Some proposals for the 1889 World's Fair included a massive stone lighthouse to symbolize progress and, believe it or not, a towering guillotine to commemorate the French Revolution. Grim, right? The guillotine design was meant to be a bold political statement, a chilling nod to France's revolutionary past. Others argued for a classical structure made of granite, something solid and timeless. But Eiffel had other plans. A daring 300-meter iron tower, light, open and modern, a symbol of industrial achievement. At first, critics called it ugly, absurd, even dangerous. But over time, the Eiffel Tower became the beating heart of Paris. Thankfully, France picked iron dreams over stone nightmares. That's all for today. Let us know in the comments, did you already know any of these surprising facts? If you liked this video, please give a thumbs up, and if you would like more updates, subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell icon so you don't miss any videos and get notifications on time.